We work so you can play.
Firestorm Armada Battle Report! Dindrenzi versus Sorylians! Matt versus Epic Duck Lake!
Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, bringing you another battle report. This one is going to be with Firestorm Armada, just with a couple starter fleets. We're going to be doing my Dindrenzi against Mike's Sorylians. So we're just opening up the starter fleets, we've painted them up, and we've done a couple practice games, and so now we're going to do our first battle report with them. So this will give you a good idea of how the game plays out. And we're just doing a standard scenario, meaning we set up on either side, and we're just going to try to destroy each other. We're not even going to use any terrain in this one. There's no asteroids or distortion fields or anything. We're going to keep it simple as we're still getting used to the game as well. And that way you can see the basic rules as well. So let's get started. And here we have our ships deployed. As you can see, it's just a starter fleet, so it's a battleship, 3 cruisers, and 6 frigates on each side. We also decided to bring in fighters, and so you're allowed to bring in up to 6 fighters that are not inside carriers with excess points, and so we just both chose whatever we wanted. There's my Dindrenzi fleet with the battleship, 2 squadrons of frigates, one of them I still have to find the stand for the base, and a squadron of cruisers. And I just decided to bring in 6 bombers. It's 1 squadron of 6 bombers. On the opposing side, we have Mike's Sorylians with his large battleship, a group of cruisers, and 2 groups of frigates. And for his fighter support, he's decided to bring in 1 squad of 3 bombers, which he's attached to this cruiser to start off to give their extra point defense against torpedoes and fighters. And over here we have another group of 2 assaulters and a group of interceptors, all attached to the main battleship. And we've just deployed facing off each other. There's no terrain or asteroids or anything, and we're just going for victory points. So basically you destroy a ship, you get full victory points for it. If you capture a ship, you get double victory points. And if a ship leaves the table, then you get full victory points. But if it shunts away, in other words, it jumps into hyperspace, then you only get half the victory points for it. And since we're pretty much even, we might be off by a few points just because the starter fleets aren't 100% matched up, but it should still be fair. And to be super fair, we're even pulling from the same pool of dice. So neither of us can complain about the dice being against us, although I'm sure we'll feel that way anyway. So here we go, jumping right into round 1. So far each side has had 2 activations. We're not going to do this by rounds as too much happens in one round. First off, we rolled for the fleet tactics and the Dindrenzi got to go first. And I just moved my squadron of 6 bombers and attached them to the battleship just to lend some extra point defense against torpedoes so he didn't get any lucky shots off against him from a distance. After which he moved up his battleship and took a pot shot at range band 4, so it was the worst range band for his weapons, and actually managed to destroy a frigate by rolling a lot of 6s. Afterwards, my cruisers moved up and opened fire all they could on a couple of frigates and only managed to do 1 hull damage to it. And then the frigates moved up and retaliated by doing 1 hull damage to the cruiser. They attempted to link fire against the frigates over here, but failed to do any significant damage from that distance. So you can see how the positioning is now starting to work out. We're still in round 1, and it's my turn to activate one of my squadrons. A few more activations. My 3 frigates moved up and attempted to take some shots at these frigates and only managed to do 1 more damage. They did not link fire. I decided to take a chance and have each of them engage one-on-one, and unfortunately that did not pan out. And then the Sorylian cruisers move up, and they all shot at the battleship, linking their fire, but they could not do enough damage. And then they actually fired a bunch of torpedoes at this frigate, dealing 8 hits. But then with the combined point defense of the frigates and his buddies, they actually managed to drop that down to 4 hits, removing it from a critical, which would have killed it, to just doing 1 hull damage. More excitement has happened. We've had the Sorylian cruisers, or the frigates, move up, and they opened fire and managed to do another damage to this cruiser, bringing him up to 2 hull points, so he only has 2 left. And then my battleship moved up and opened fire on the middle cruiser there and dealt a critical hit, damaging his engines and doing 2 hull points. He fired his torpedoes as well, but to no effect. And then the frigates moved up and managed to do another critical against the middle one and finishing off that cruiser. Unfortunately, he did not blow up or leave a distortion field, so his companions are fine. We are currently in round 2 with a few activations. The first thing that happened was my battleship moved forward and opened fire on the cruiser that used to be here, that had the 3 bombers attached, destroying it in one single shot. Well, not technically one shot, 16 dice, managed to do 2 critical hits. Neither of them blew up the ship, and all the bombers exploded survived the explosion, although 2 of them were driven off, so only one of them will be able to activate. Unfortunately, the Firestorm Armada rulebook is a little unclear of certain things, such as what happens to ships, or what happens to the fighters if they're not destroyed but they still suffer a hit. Or, for example, if you can point defense against ships that are attached. We've made a house rule just now that you can't point defense against ships that are, or wings that are attached. And then the disadvantage to the wings is that if the ship that they're attached to blows up, then they take damage. So that's the risk that you take. After I did that, the remaining cruiser moved up, opened fire a little bit, did not do any damage, and then dropped all of its boarders, assaulted this frigate, and actually managed to kill off my assaulters, or my assaulters and one of the crew. And so I have no more assaulters, only 1 crew, and I only managed to kill off 2 of his assaulters, so this is actually an ongoing boarding assault. So that 2 is the Sorylians, and my 0 and 1, that is for the Dindrenzi. The Dindrenzi cruisers moved up and managed to do a bit of damage to the battleship, inflicting 1 hull point. And then their gun racks actually managed to kill off 2 frigates from this group. So that was pretty significant. Rolled a lot of 6s with one of them, so that really helped lend to the fight there. These frigates then activated and moved up, and they opened fire with everything. Their front weapons on the frigate, their side weapon on this frigate, and the other side weapon on this cruiser, unfortunately could not inflict any damage. The Sorylian battlecruiser moved up and revealed his true colors, that once you get things into all of your sides, all of your arcs, they really get to do a lot of damage. He shot off torpedoes and broadsides over at this cruiser, inflicting 3 hull damage and 2 crew damage, so 1 assault and 1 crew point has been lost. And then he did the same thing to the battleship, only managing to inflict 1 hull damage. And so the battleship was able to do quite a bit of damage there, almost destroying that cruiser. It was very close to destroying it. First off, my frigates activated, and I decided that since these guys are being boarded anyway, I'd attempt a ram against his battleship. Unfortunately, the bridge crew was too preoccupied by the boarding assault to actually resolve it, so nothing happened. They just stopped short. The other frigate opened fire and did nothing. And after that, the boarding assault continued, and my ship is now captured. So next turn, he has to get him out of here. And then his frigate activated, moved up, and managed to destroy 1 frigate on the side, opened fire on a couple other ships too, but not dealing any damage, so killed off another frigate. We are finished round 2. Basically what else happened was that the assaulters moved up and assaulted the frigate. Unfortunately did no crew damage to me, but I managed to kill off one of the assaulters. So there's still 1 more assaulter on board trying to take over the ship by himself. And this interceptor moved over and killed a bomber. The bombers attempted to do a bombing run against that same frigate, but the one that was allowed to go in was driven off. So we're now moving into round 3. So as you can see, this game is pretty intense. Already in round 2, we're pretty much wrapping up the game, and a lot of damage to all the ships.